Hello, and welcome to the Spiritual Psychotherapy Podcast. My name is Jennifer Sneeden, and I am delighted that you have joined me for today's episode. Today is all about one of my most favorite topics in the world, which is managing our emotions, moving from despair to joy, finding a way to take control of our emotional state so that we are not at the mercy of happenstance and life happening to us. I know in my own life, this understanding made a profound impact. And I use it with every single client I see, whether I'm doing therapy or coaching, regardless of whether the client has any type of spiritual orientation or religious affiliation. This is such a powerful tool, and I'm delighted to share it with you today. So, the first part that I want to talk about, and you therapists, you will get this completely. When I'm working with a client, the very first thing that we talk about is you have the power to control your emotions. Now, I know that for those of you listening that do this work, that's kind of like, whatever, of course. But for those of you who are new on this journey, that is such a profound revelation. And I'll generally spend 3 or 4 sessions with clients just working on this, just giving them the tools to control their emotions and then letting them see what happens. Because the moment you realize my emotions don't have to be a reaction to what's happening around me, your whole life changes. And then when we take it a step further, being intentional about your emotional state, deciding how you want to feel, and then setting yourself up to feel that way. When a client masters this skill, they have the freedom to choose how they want to feel. They're no longer bound by depression or fear or despair or powerlessness. They have the ability to choose how they feel and to then see what happens in their lives, what changes for them once they're able to control their emotions. I believe teaching clients the ability to manage their emotions is the most helpful thing that we can do as psychotherapists, regardless of our orientation. So, what is the tool that I use to help clients with this? There is a tool that I carry with me. I hand out to clients when we're face to face. I give the link out on Zoom calls, but everybody who works with me is going to get really familiar with a tool called the Emotional Guidance Scale. Now, this comes from the brilliant work of Abraham Hicks, and it comes specifically from the book Ask and It Is Given. And I have put a link to the emotional guidance scale in the show notes of this episode. So you can go on out to my website and grab it. No, you don't have to opt in for an email or anything. It's just out there because I believe this is so powerful as a tool. I want to get it in everybody's hands. So the principle behind the emotional guidance scale is that there are 22 different vibrational frequencies that our emotions can range between. At the top of the scale is number 1. This is joy, appreciation, empowerment, freedom, love, all of those blissful feeling emotions. I have one client recently who described it as euphoria, which I thought was a fantastic word as well. And then we move down into the lower frequency emotions as we work down the scale down to number 22, which is fear, grief, desperation, despair, and powerlessness. And you can understand why somebody who's in number 22, powerless, despair, fear, they feel like a victim. They don't feel like they have control over their emotions. So when you talk to them about controlling their emotions, they can't hear that conversation, right? When you talk to them about happiness and love and freedom, they can't hear that conversation because those things are up at the very top of the scale and they're down at the very bottom of the scale. So we have an opportunity to do two really important things here. The first is help our clients understand where they really are on the emotional guidance scale. My experience is that most people overestimate where they are, and it's a very it's a big reality check when they have to acknowledge I'm not really where I thought I was. So I will ask clients very early on, generally in the first session, where they think they are most of the time. I ask this question because we all have what's called an emotional set point, a place on the scale that we sort of land, right? And we go up and down every single day, but there's a place on the scale where we generally land. And people will often put themselves between about 7 and 9 on this scale. Contentment, satisfaction, pessimism, sometimes frustration and irritation. So in the beginning, I'm just asking them to identify their emotional state. Then I send them home with the exercise of just watch yourself over the next week and random times during the week, pull out the emotional guidance scale and just see where you are. And what happens then when they come back in the next session is a little bit of shock and probably some discouragement because most people are not honest with themselves about the way they feel, particularly us women, right? We're so conditioned to putting a smiley face on everything, to pretending we feel something we don't feel. But that doesn't negate the fact that we're feeling it. So we're feeling something inside and projecting something different outside. And the emotional guidance scale will point that out to people really quickly. So once you understand what your set point is, and I encourage everybody listening to this episode to do this exact exercise, go out to my website, print out that emotional guidance scale or save the link on your phone and just randomly throughout the week, check in. How am I feeling? You're going to be shocked. But the good news in recognizing this, the good news in being honest about this is now that you know where you are, you can easily set a stage for where you want to go. Until you know where you are, you don't know what direction to head. We all pretty much know we want joy and happiness and fulfillment, right? But if we don't know where we are, we don't know the best path to get there. So, as startling as it can be to get that reality check of, wow, I'm a lot further down on the emotional guidance scale than I thought I was, it gives you now the resources and the tools to change. So once somebody recognizes this, the way we help them move up the emotional guidance scale is in little bits at a time. So if I have a client who acknowledges they're spending most of their week in desperation or despair, I can't talk to them about happiness and joy, eager joy for life, right? It's just a complete mismatch. Instead, what I'm going to be doing is talking to them maybe about rage or anger. I'm helping them move up through through the emotional guidance scale into higher level energy vibrations, little chunks at a time. So for those of you that are listening to this, if somebody's in depression or despair or just um, desperation, they're at number 22 on the scale. If I can move them up to hatred or rage, that's number 19 on the scale. And I find that this is where a lot of people get stuck. So for a lot of people, when I'm teaching them to move up from these lower level emotions, they've got to move through hatred, rage, and anger. It's just part of the process. They can't skip those emotions. So, what many people do is they start to move up from depression, let's say, or fear or panic or anxiety, and they're overcome with rage and anger, and they're so freaked out by it that feels like a bad emotion that they shouldn't feel, that they stop the process and they drop back down into depression or despair, which feels a lot better to them. So when we can coach our clients to move through those really awful feeling emotions, hatred, rage, anger, and feel safe in the process, now they're in a much more empowered place. Don't get me wrong, rage, hatred, anger, they all suck, right? Nobody wants to stay there, but they're more empowered emotions than depression, despair, anxiety, panic. Now, when somebody's in that place, now we can guide them to move up in another chunk. And generally, I'll take them from this anger, hatred, rage. We'll move up the scale all the way to like 11 or 12, overwhelm, disappointment, even doubt and worry, because those emotions are at a higher level vibrational frequency, but they're very attainable from where the client is. Then, as we continue to move upward, I ask clients to aim for contentment or satisfaction. Contentment and satisfaction are very manageable when you're in frustration, irritation, even disappointment. You can visualize contentment. You can imagine contentment and what it would feel like. So you're moving up these emotions in little chunks that are very manageable to do. And now at number 7, you're in contentment and satisfaction. For so many clients, this is such a relief. And I think that this is such a relief that this is where most traditional psychotherapy ends, right? They're in contentment, they're in satisfaction. The problem is no longer a problem. However, what we've created here is this incredible opportunity for people to move even another step further, because the important distinction I want you to understand with this is we have not moved the client to contentment. We have taught the client how to move themselves to contentment. That's a really important distinction, because as therapists, we don't want to be in people's lives for the next 15 years, right? We want to help them get the tools to live these wonderful, thriving, magnificent lives and then get out of their hair so they can go live it. So we've given them the tools to get up to contentment and satisfaction. Now, this is one of my sisters calls this idling, and idling is a tremendous relief when you've been on the lower half of the emotional scale. And I let clients idle here for a little while. I let them sit here for a little while. Generally, it's, you know, 4 or 5 sessions, something like that, because they have to really learn to believe it. They've got to believe that this isn't a fluke, it's not some weird thing, and they have to just sit in that and gain their confidence. However, it gets a little boring after a while, and this is a really good thing, right? We don't want to live our lives just sitting out on the back porch with a glass of iced tea for the rest of our lives. We think we do when we're really struggling. We think we want that rest and ease and leisure, and it's a great thing when you're struggling to find that. But once you've sat in contentment, leisure, ease, satisfaction for a little while, it does get a bit dull. And now clients are ready to make that leap to the top of the scale. And this process, what's really cool about this is it happens so quickly. You can get movement in just one session. Now, is it going to be a change in their set point? No, and that's totally fine. But you give the client the opportunity to see, oh my gosh, this is what's really possible. And once they get that taste of happiness, now they're very eager to be off and running and doing that themselves. So the big part of this work is taking clients that are at the bottom of the scale and helping them work their way at their pace, at the pace they're ready for, up to contentment and satisfaction. This could take 6 sessions. It could take 8 sessions. If you're dealing with somebody with chronic trauma, it could take 12 or 15 sessions. And then once they get to contentment, satisfaction, ease, let them hang out there for as long as they need to until it becomes old news. And once it becomes old news, now this to me is where the real like juiciness of the work comes in. And this is the piece that's missing in traditional psychotherapy. Just as we moved them up to contentment and satisfaction, now we can use the emotional guidance scale to move up to joy, appreciation, empowerment, freedom, love, all of these really higher feeling emotions that we want, because those emotions are now accessible to them. And at this point, law of attraction is on our side. When somebody is in the bottom of the scale, fear, depression, anxiety, panic, law of attraction is not on our side. They have a lot of momentum going in the wrong direction. And it takes some work to slow that down, and actually moving up the emotional guidance scale to contentment. All you're doing is stopping the momentum in the wrong direction. You're slowing it down so much that they can sort of stop and come to a standstill and have a very neutral vibration. And that's why you have to go very slowly and take it in very manageable chunks for your client, because I don't want to fight the law of attraction. I don't think you want to fight the law of attraction either. That's a battle we're not going to win, right? So we just gradually slow down the momentum. But now, once we get to contentment and satisfaction, now law of attraction is on our side. And the minute you can step into that higher part of the scale, boom, law of attraction is going to kick in, and the momentum is going to carry us to that higher part of the scale. It is such an incredible experience to watch with clients. There is nothing more satisfying than being part of this experience and seeing a client go from despair to contentment. That's the hard work. Seeing them go from contentment to joy, there is nothing more exciting than being part of that process with a client, because now, again, you haven't moved them to joy. They've moved themselves, and they have this emotional guidance scale that they can use as a tool now to manage their own emotions. They don't need to come back to therapy every time they experience a loss or have a difficult period or are struggling in life. They now have the capability to manage their emotions themselves. So whenever they experience in life, whatever happens, they have the confidence to know that they can deal with it. And that is the magic of this work. Have fun with this. Work the emotional guidance scale. Practice it. Go out to my website and grab it. Practice it over the next week. See where you are. And I promise, once you master these emotions, you're going to constantly be able to decide the way you want to feel. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in the next episode.